Have you ever stopped to think how a kid who crashed on park benches could end up headlining stadiums? From huddling in a thin hoodie against city rain to flipping empty pockets into chart-topping streams, these musicians flipped the script on life. Right now, we're diving into the real, no-edit stories of rappers who once had nowhere to lay their heads. Stick around, every story might just light a fire under your own dreams. First, let's shine a light on the unstoppable DMX. Born Earl Simmons, he cut his teeth in Yonkers, New York, a rough patch where danger skirted the block and every breath of hope froze like winter air. As a teen, he faced homelessness head-on. His own bedroom was a dream he couldn't claim. Instead, he squeezed onto friends' couches, crashed in hollow buildings with shattered glass, even curled up on the unforgiving slab of a subway bench. Picture waking to clammy concrete chilling your skin while distant trains wail and only the shuffle of strangers breaks the silence. Through all that chaos, DMX found one steady rope: writing. He seized any scrap paper bag stubs, ripped notebook sheet, even the back of a cereal box, and bled his truth across it. The lines were jagged and honest, mixing rage at the world, quick prayers for brighter tomorrows, and a stubborn promise that he wouldn't stay down. By day, he picked up odd gigs cleaning cars, running errands, anything that slid a few crumpled dollars his way. By night, he slapped together beats and turned those coins into mixtapes, sliding each one into the frayed pocket of his battered backpack. Riding the subway turned into DMX's pop-up studio. He plopped on the freezing metal seat, slid on the headphones, and nodded as the beat adjusted his flow. Hunger chewed at his insides, yet it never crushed his will. He bottled that ache and spilled it onto lines that hit like a shout. Each rhyme was both diary entry and battle cry. I refused to snap. Selling those mixtapes at the corner wasn't simple cash. It was proof he mattered. It shouted, "Others trust my story. They feel the same hurt I feel." Then came the break. One afternoon, a Def Jam scout picked up a disc whatever shop, whoever tipped him, and froze at the realness in the growl. Unlike slick acts bragging about bottle service and big wheels, DMX rapped about faith, survival, and the cage life. He painted God and the devil arguing inside his head, and that tug-of-war echoed from block to block. So when Def Jam slid a deal across the table, he gained more than ink a roof, real studio time, and room to blast his tale worldwide. Yet even after he moved into a safe environment, DMX never forgot those nights shivering in alleyways. He carried that memory into the booth, infusing every track on its dark and hell is hot with unfiltered emotion. Songs like Rough Rider's Anthem and Stop Being Greedy weren't just bangers, they were raw documents of a man who had once known fear as a constant companion. His gravel-toned bark, that mix of pain and power, became a trademark. Fans didn't just listen to DMX, they felt him. DMX's journey teaches us a timeless lesson. Sometimes, the fiercest roar emerges from life's coldest corners. When adversity presses you against the wall, it can also push you to find your voice. And when you speak that truth, the world can't help but listen. Now, moving on to Eminem. Before the Slim Shady LP shook the world, Marshall Mathers lived a life defined by instability and struggle. When his mother's house was foreclosed, he and his young daughter, Haley, found themselves in a revolving door of motels, temporary apartments, sometimes no roof at all. Night after night, Marshall parked his only true sanctuary, a beat-up 1994 Chevy, under dim streetlights, turning the back seat into a makeshift bedroom. Imagine tucking your child into a blanket meant for camping, the hum of traffic as your lullaby, wondering if morning would bring another night on the road. Despite the uncertainty, Eminem found refuge in rhyme. He hauled a battered tape deck in his trunk, layering beats and recording verses whenever he could carve out quiet time. Those midnight sessions weren't just practice, they were therapy. Each rhyme scribbled on notebook margins became a lifeline, a way to process anger over eviction, guilt over instability, and fear for his daughter's future. He'd play back those recordings over and over, seeking the perfect cadence, the raw honesty that would one day resonate worldwide. Stability remained elusive. Friends and fellow rappers offered couches and garage floors to crash on, but no place felt permanent. Even when opportunity knocked, Marshall refused to water down his lyrics. Struggling with addiction and personal demons, he channeled every hardship into his art, He refused to sugarcoat his story. Lines about poverty, fractured family ties, and self-doubt became the backbone of his tracks. That vulnerability was revolutionary. In an era when mainstream rap often celebrated excess, Eminem's confessionals cut through the noise. He wasn't boasting about fast cars. He was bearing his scars. Then came the moment that changed everything. A demo in the hands of Dr. Dre. Dre heard not just technical skill, but raw authenticity. He recognized that this artist's pain could speak to millions. Under Dre's guidance, Eminem transformed those shaky parking lot recordings into the razor-sharp tracks on the Slim Shady LP. Songs like My Name Is introduced audiences to Slim Shady's dark humor, while deeper cuts revealed the wounded poet beneath. As albums followed, the Marshall Mathers LP, The Eminem Show, and beyond, Marshall's chart dominance proved that genius can emerge from the backseat of a sedan. With every platinum record, he kept his roots in sight, often pausing mid-concert to dedicate songs to his daughter or reflect on those motel nights. His journey reminds every underdog that vulnerability can be your greatest weapon, and that a microphone is more than a tool. It's a passport out of despair. When the world hears Eminem today, they hear not just a master lyricist, but a survivor who turned life's harshest blows into music that refuses to be ignored. Next, let's dive into the story of 50 Cent. Born Curtis 50 Cent Jackson in South Jamaica, Queens, his early life was as rugged as the name he'd one day adopt. After losing his mother at age 8 and being bounced between relatives, Curtis found himself navigating the crack-riddled streets where danger and desperation were constant companions. He didn't just sleep in hallways, he crashed on them, tucking himself into corners of abandoned buildings or under flickering street lamps. On the rare nights he made it to a shelter, he'd raid the clothing bins for blankets, borrowing whatever he could to keep from freezing. By day, Curtis hustled anything he could, selling mixtapes, running small errands for local crews, even bartering trinkets for meals. But as night fell, he transformed an abandoned church basement into his impromptu studio. Armed with nothing but a ghostly boombox, a single mic, and an unbreakable will, he laid down raw vocals over scratched-together beats. Those early tapes had no polish, just Curtis's unfiltered truths about hunger, loss, and survival. He'd hand them out on street corners, watching each passerby's reaction as if it were stock footage of his own destiny unfolding. Then came How to Rob, a bold, irreverent track that dared to lampoon music industry heavyweights. It wasn't just the clever wordplay that turned heads, it was the conviction behind every bar. Listeners heard more than satire. They heard a guy who had known genuine fear, genuine hunger. Those verses didn't come from a studio in Hollywood. They came from a basement where Curtis sometimes went to bed wondering if tomorrow would bring another roof over his head. Word of his raw talent reached Eminem and Dr. Dre, two artists who recognized that Curtis's story was more potent than any manufactured image. When they offered him a spot on their labels, it wasn't just a career move, it was his escape hatch. Suddenly, he had a place to sleep that wasn't concrete, access to state-of-the-art studios, and a platform to amplify his voice. Yet Curtis never let go of that basement-born hustle. He still spoke with the gravel in his throat, the same urgency that gripped him when he hustled cassette tapes on cold corners. Every lyric about survival still echoes those sleepless nights. When he raps about many men trying to drain him, you can feel the echo of alleyway skirmishes. When he boasts about rising from nothing, you see him clutching that phantom blanket in a shelter bin. And when he celebrates life's luxuries, it's with the gratefulness of someone who once had none. 50 Cent's rise is a testament to one truth. Sometimes, you must scrape together every last cent and every last moment of comfort to build an empire. His story reminds us that real grit isn't practiced in plush studios. It's forged in abandoned basements and on freezing streets. And when you finally break through, that grit becomes the foundation you can never lose. Shifting gears to Styles P. Long before David Styles P, Styles found himself sharing stages with hip-hop royalty. He was wrestling with the harsh realities of life in Yonkers and Manhattan. As one half of the LOX, his future velvet smooth cadence seemed written in the stars. But his past was etched in park benches and borrowed couches. When Styles P wasn't hustling beats, he was hustling space to sleep, moving from one friend's sofa to another's cramped bedroom, always staying just one step ahead of the street. By day, he hustled mixtapes and small jobs wherever he could, handing out tapes in subway stations, delivering groceries for cash, or even unloading trucks in the dead of night. But as dusk settled in, David's true work began. Clutching a notepad under a flickering street lamp, he'd scribble bars about hunger that felt as real as the ache in his bones, about loyalty tested by desperation, and about dreams he could almost taste if only he could find the mic. Each word he wrote was a promise to himself. No matter how cold the concrete, he would rise. Those park bench recording sessions were far from glamorous. He rigged mini studios in empty outdoor alcoves, boom box on one side, pencil-sharpened rhymes on the other. Passers-by mistook him for a street performer or a restless night owl. Few realized that each tape he pressed into their hands was a piece of his soul, raw and unfiltered. They felt something in his voice, an undercurrent of pain laced with steely resolve that no studio polish could ever replicate. When the Loax inked their deal with Bad Boy Records, Styles P finally stepped into the spotlight. Yet his first solo project, A Gangster and a Gentleman, wasn't just another album. It was a chronicle of nights spent wondering where his next meal or bed would come from. Tracks like Good Times weren't just nostalgic odes. They were testimonials to survival, each beat carrying the weight of uncertainty he once bore alone. Listeners didn't just nod their heads, they felt his journey reverberate in their chests, recognizing the authenticity he bled into every verse. Today, when Styles P delivers those velvety lines about grit and grace, you hear more than talent. You hear testimony. His street-honed scars transformed into lyrical armor, giving him the credibility to speak on life's raw edges without apology. From couch surfing in the cold to selling out venues worldwide, Styles P's rise underscores one undeniable truth. Authenticity is more powerful than any record deal. It's the willingness to share your scars, to stand before the world unvarnished, that elevates an artist from local legend to cultural icon. And in every bar he spits, Styles P reminds us that sometimes the real luxury lies not in a mansion's walls, but in the honesty that once kept you alive. Then there's Meek Mill. Born Robert Remick Williams, he learned early that survival means adaptation. In his teenage years, before the bright lights and roaring crowds, Meek faced trials that would have broken most people. Family disputes and a series of legal issues upended his childhood home, forcing him to pack his life into a backpack and move wherever he could find a safe corner. Sometimes that meant crashing on a friend's couch, other times dozing in hotel lobbies long after the staff had clocked out, wrapped in a thin comforter until dawn. Those uncertain nights set the stage for Meek's relentless work ethic. He didn't wait for opportunities, he created them. Armed with little more than youthful ambition and a battered laptop, he began dropping mixtapes almost weekly. Each release was a declaration. No matter how shaky his footing, he was coming for the top. He'd hustle physical copies at local shows and on street corners, swapping stories and beats for spare change. The grind didn't stop when the sun rose. He'd be back in a studio by dawn, battling underground MCs for precious studio time, often trading favors just to get 2 hours on the boards. It was during this period of constant hustle that Meek inked the anthem that would define his breakthrough, Dreams and Nightmares. Far from generic braggadocio, the track was a raw chronicle of his life. Every lyric soaked in the desperation and hope that fueled those hotel lobby slumbers. When he recorded the opening bars, "I used to pray for times like this, to rhyme like this," listeners didn't just hear bravado, they felt the echo of waiting room ceilings and the ache of midnight solitude. The song became a rallying cry, not just for Meek, but for anyone who'd ever stayed up all night chasing a dream. When Dreams and Nightmares vaulted him onto national stages, the transformation was electric. Stadiums that once felt out of reach now pulsed with fans singing every word, feeling every sleepless sacrifice alongside him. Even as he climbed Billboard charts and collaborated with chart-topping superstars, Meek never lost sight of those early struggles. Mid-performance, he often pauses, eyes scanning the crowd, as if sending a silent nod back to all the friends' floors and lobby chairs that once held him. Meek's climb illustrates that true perseverance often comes not from privilege, but from the crucible of adversity. Institutional setbacks, court dates, injunctions, and public scrutiny could have derailed his momentum. Instead, he turned each obstacle into lyrical fuel, transforming courtroom battles into confessional verses and probationary restrictions into studio deadlines. His story proves that sometimes the hardest chapters can become the most powerful verses in your own anthem. And when the beat drops, you remember, legends aren't born from comfort zones. They're forged in the fires of survival. Now, let's explore The Weeknd. Before Abel Tesfayer's name lit up award shows, he was a teenager hustling his art in the shadows of Toronto's skyline. After dropping out of high school, he had no safety net, just a backpack full of notebooks and a craving to be heard. With no money for studio time, he couch-surfed in cramped basements where the heat was off and off, and the only music came from a dusty boombox in the corner. By night, he'd slip into dingy clubs, not as the headliner, but as the unknown singer willing to perform for scraps of change, his voice echoing off graffiti-stained walls. Back in those early days, Abel recorded on a friend's battered laptop, layering his voice over makeshift beats he pulled from royalty-free samples. Each track he uploaded to the internet carried a silent plea. Pay attention. He posted anonymously, no flashy name or photo, just raw songs about heartbreak, loneliness, and that aching uncertainty of not knowing where you'd sleep. Every play meant a few extra cents in his PayPal, enough to grab a cheap sandwich or cover one more night's rest on a friend's floor. 2 songs captured that era's desperation like no others. In House of Balloons, his voice paints a late-night scene of empty bottles and blurred lights, an actual snapshot of his nights crammed into unfamiliar spaces. And Wicked Games laid bare his vulnerability, confessing pain so raw it felt like a private diary entry set to haunting melodies. When listeners heard those tracks, they didn't just hear an R&B singer. They heard someone who'd slept on unheated floors, whose every note was shaped by loneliness. Slowly, the buzz grew. Music blogs picked up his songs. YouTube algorithms recommended them to curious ears. Labels came knocking, but Abel held out for the right team, one that would let him keep that dark, genre-blurring sound. When he finally got the call to step into a real studio, it wasn't just an upgrade in equipment. It was a life-changing moment that meant no more waking up to damp blankets and stale air. In the studio, he retained that underground edge, refusing to smooth over his vocals or shy away from unconventional song structures. Hits like The Hills and Starboy carried the same emotional weight as those laptop demos, but with a sonic polish that catapulted him onto global stages. Yet even as sold-out arenas replaced the back of his friend's couch, Abel Tes never lost sight of his roots. He often credits those early struggles with teaching him to be fearless, to mix rap cadence with R&B soul, and to tackle themes no one else dared. The Weeknd's journey shows that true innovation can spring from necessity. When you're forced to create in isolation, you discover sounds and stories only you can tell. From basement mic checks to center stage spotlights, his rise reminds us that sometimes the most groundbreaking art emerges from the quiet, unseen corners where dreams refuse to die. Finally, let's turn to Freddie Gibbs. Before the world knew Frederick Tipton as a platinum-selling rapper, he was a young artist hitchhiking between Indiana and Chicago, often with nothing more than a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. After late-night shows or marathon studio sessions, he would crash on strangers' floors, anywhere he could find a spot, sometimes waking on hardwood at dawn with just a jacket for warmth. Money was so tight that his meals often came from alleyway scraps or the occasional odd job, sweeping floors at a local shop, unloading boxes at a corner store, even helping movers for spare change. Through all that uncertainty, Freddie treated his notebooks like gold. Every rhymed line he wrote in cramped basement studios or backseat phone light sessions was precious currency, proof he was sharpening his craft despite complete instability. He hustled those early demos the old-school way, pressing tapes, handing them out to DJs, and letting his grit do the talking. His lyrics didn't boast about luxury cars or designer threads. They painted unfiltered portraits of everyday struggle, stories of neighborhood strife, late-night hunger, and the hunger for something better. Then came the underground hit Thuggin', a visceral anthem that crackled with raw honesty. When that track began appearing on mixtapes and turning up on blog playlists, labels finally took notice. But Freddie wasn't about to trade authenticity for mainstream gloss. He insisted on keeping the unvarnished edge that defined his early work. And when he did move into a proper studio apartment, he packed it with the same mindset he carried on those nomadic nights: relentless focus and unwavering self-belief. Even now, when he steps on stage in front of thousands, there's a spark in his eyes that tells you he remembers those nights spent sleeping wherever he could, sometimes a couch, sometimes a stranger's spare room, and once in a dingy recording booth when no other option existed. That memory fuels every verse he spits. When he raps about the grind, you feel the weight of duffel bags and midnight street corners. When he delivers a line full of defiance, you hear echoes of a young hitchhiker refusing to quit. Freddie Gibbs' journey underscores a simple truth: true focus isn't born in comfort zones. It's forged in the places where uncertainty reigns and resources run dry. By never losing sight of his art, no matter how precarious his circumstances, he carved a path from strangers' floors to global acclaim. And every time his voice cuts through a beat, it carries the grit of those nights when he had nothing but his notebook, his ambition, and the open road ahead. From DMX's concrete floors to 50 Cent's church basements, these artists prove that the hardest struggles can fuel the greatest triumphs. They turned cold nights and borrowed blankets into platinum records and sold-out tours. Which of these journeys hit you hardest? Drop a comment to let us know whose story you're resonating with, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring deep dives into music's most powerful tales.